Hey there YouTube, this is Trbailey and I'm coming at you guys with a brand new video of me playing against Vexacus4666 and let's just see kind of how this works out. So I go first in game 1 because I win the rock paper scissors duel here and I open Rabbit Factory, so I'm going to go ahead and because I already have a wind up magician in my hand, I'm going to get Shark. And the reason why you get the factory search before Upstart is because what I'm trying to hit with Upstart here is a trap card, and Shark isn't a trap card. So if I get Shark out of the deck, that's one less monster I can hit, and so that's kind of the idea of what I'm going here. But because I don't have any traps, I just go ahead and end. And I drew the Thunder King, which is absolutely insane. You know, obviously against Spellbooks. So I thought this Thunder King would have a little bit more of an impact in this game, but you'll just see a little bit later on how this ends up turning out. So Vexy takes a few minutes to think about kind of what he's going to do here. He ends up going with the breaker, and he comes into attack for 19, and then in main phase 2 he blows it up, the factory, so I don't have it anymore, which is a very solid play. Then he sets, I believe, 3 cards at the end phase after he gets his secret searches and goes off a bit. He has Tower. So it's not looking like too hard for the home team, but it's also not looking too strong either. So he reveals the wisdom here and gets his card. Yeah, so he gets the Tower off here, off of his Spellbook of Master, which copied his Spellbook of Secrets, and he sets 3 cards face down and activates Tower and gives it off to me. So during my standby phase, Rabbit comes back, and I draw a warning for turn here, which is insane because I believe I had warning in all 3 games against him. And if people don't know, warning is just really good in general, but it's really good against Spellbooks. So because I have the Magician Shark, I just go ahead and elect to do that. But because I'm scared of possible trap cards, I end up short playing into the wind-up Rabbit. So that way if he has a Torrential, then that play ends up being that I have a Magician Shark coming back, or a Magician and a Rabbit coming back. So that's kind of the idea of what I'm doing here. So that's why I elected to do what I did in that situation. So I go in and get the Rabbit instead of just going for it, which ends up being the right play, as you'll see. He didn't have the Torrential, but he does have another card that stops me from pushing for game, which obviously you just don't push for game into 4 back row. But I also didn't feel comfortable summoning Thunder King because I didn't want him to fade it face down and attack over with Breaker. So what ends up happening here is this is what I'm testing right here for the YCS San Mateo. I decide to go into Maystroke because I feel like I want him to activate Spellbook of Fate and book it face down, or lose his breaker so he can't activate Spellbook of Fate, because he only has 2 spellbooks in his graveyard, and so that's kind of what I'm trying to get him to do right now. But he doesn't. He ends up having the Threatening Roar, which is fine. You know, to me it's okay because now I have a card that can beat Spellbook of Fate by itself, and I have Solemn Warning, so I just go ahead and set the Solemn Warning and pass to him. So he only has 4 total cards, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 total cards when he draws to my 7. And one of them's an Xyz that books a card face down. So it means that no matter what happens next turn, his card's going face down, whether he Spellbook of Fates or not. So that's his graveyard right there, is the Threatening and the Master and the Secrets. He's obviously going to put back one of his cards as Secrets, and he's going to draw 1 for Tower. So he comes equal with me with card advantage here. So he summons the Magician, and I'm definitely not letting that resolve. So I Solemn Warning that because that's just standard. So I just Solemn Warning that. I try to stop his plays so he doesn't able to form the recursion with Secrets and Magician. Because if you have Secrets and Magician, you can form a huge recursion that just happens every turn, and there's nothing your opponent can do about it outside of Solemn Warning. So I didn't want to give him that opportunity. So I elected to do that. With the way my field stood right here, he probably very well could have decided to Spellbook of Fate, but he also now, once again, because he did Tower back, he only has 2 in the graveyard for Spellbook of Fate. So that needs to be kept in mind right now. If anyone questions Vexacus' playing, because as you see here, he only has 2 spellbooks in the graveyard for that play. So he enters battle, but he realizes I'm just going to play the rabbit game, so he just doesn't even bother with it and passes. So I'll draw for turn, and I decide to go ahead and activate Maestroke's effect to prevent a Spellbook of Fate during this turn, or to force it now. So that's why I did that. And instead of summoning Thunder King, I felt like it would, or I was planning on summoning Thunder King in this situation because he couldn't Fate, but I decided to Duality instead, or I decided to Duality first because I planned on summoning Thunder King and not specialing. And then when I got the Tenki in my Duality, I felt like it was just a better play to get the rabbits because there's nothing he could really do about rabbit. So I felt like having the 3 rabbits on the field, which I usually, I'm not a huge fan of, but I felt like in this situation it was the best way I could do it because it basically it equals his recursion with mine. And so that's why I decided to have the 3 rabbit, is because even if he has Magician and he has Fate, I can bounce my rabbits and he can only get rid of 1. So even if he does manage to have Spellbook of Fate and I allow him to do it, I do keep a rabbit in play to beat his Magician. And we already know that Breaker's defense is 1,000, so he ends up losing his Breaker to a rabbit. And then I attack for 3,000, and then 48 total, I believe. Yep, that is the number. 48 total damage on that turn to Vexy. And to be honest, I don't know how well he drew this game. I knew he drew his recursion, and I had the warning to stop it. So, I mean, in that sense, I did have the upper hand. But he did get towers off like twice, which is a huge deal. So now he only has 1 for his Spellbook of Fate, which is kind of the idea. I just want to keep him away from Spellbook of Fate because that is the card that hits my deck the worst out of all the cards in that deck. So, and his recursion is just ridiculous. So, because I'm not fearing the Torrential, I just go ahead and summon it to see if he'll flip his cards. But he doesn't have the back row to stop me. One of those cards I know is a Wisdom and a Fate, and the other one is a question mark. So I just go in, and it's not a Mirror Force, and it's not a Torrential, and so, I win the game, and we end up going to game 2. Alright, so the cat's out of the bag. This is the list I'm playing for San Mateo, except you'll see I made a mistake because the Zen mains in this deck is supposed to be a Zen Mayo, and I forgot to put that card back in. And so this ends up coming in big in this game. I felt like I could have won if I still had the Zen Mayo in the deck. So obviously I side in the 2 Veilers, the 2 Zombie World, the 1 DNA Surgery, the 1 Dust Tornado, and the 3 Mind Crush. The reason why I side 3 Mind Crush is specifically for this matchup because it's really tough. And so I decide here to side out the whole Invoker engine to make way, and my 2 Max C's, because even though Max C can beat Temperance, or not beat it, but you can drop it on Temperance, it's still just not better than Veiler in this matchup. So that's my thinking there when it came to the switching of the hand traps. Also, Veiler's just good against Spellbook Magician of Prophecy as well. And I opened up really good. Well, not really good, but I opened up fairly good. And as you can see, he opens up pretty good himself with the Spellbook of Secrets play. I opened up the Solemn Warning and the one of DNA Surgery. The DNA Surgery, it turns the Spellbooks into... it turns his spellcasters into other monsters. So then he's not able to get boosts off of his Star Hall that he plays, or the other card. He can't activate this card, Spellbook of the Master, or Power. And in some situations, it stops Tower from getting searches, or for getting the extra draws. So DNA Surgery changes his spellcasters to other monsters, making cards like Fate useless, and that's kind of the idea there. So as you can see here, I opened up pretty good. And I have the Book of Moon, which is the play here if I draw the right card, and I do. I draw Shark. And so the idea, what I was going to go for here is I was going to book his guy here and go into Zen Mayo, but I completely forgot that my testing from last night, I had taken out the Zen Mayo, and so I didn't have it in my extra deck. So when I go for the play, I end up having to get Tyrus instead, which ends up, the game gets altered a lot because of this play. Because I'm not sure if I'm going to get, because I think I was going to end up, during the time I was going to get his back row, and then I was just going to let him get his search because I had the warning and I had the DNA Surgery. So I was just going to just blow him out here, and that was the idea. So I end up so it sucks because I forgot that I cut Zen Mayo. So after I Book of Moon, I'm just looking at my extra deck, like, what am I going to make here? And, you know, and I end up just going with the Tiras play because it's the best play, and I had to make up for my own misplay here. And sometimes you beat yourself in Yu-Gi-Oh! For things that you do outside of the game itself. And this is one of those really odd situations that happen. I forgot Zen Mayo, and to sum it up shortly, this game goes on longer than it should because I cut the card. If not, I win this game turns before, because Zen Mayo plus Rat is really good. He's not going to be able to set back row. So that's kind of the idea here, is what would have happened. Tiras still does do some pretty good work in this game, but it's not Zen Mayo. Like, that's the thing I need to emphasize. It's not Zen Mayo in this game, and that's just all there is to it. So I end up destroying one of his face-down cards. It turns out to be a Spellbook of Fate, which is what I knew he had set there. So I set a couple of cards and passed turn to him after detaching for Tiras' effect. So it's his turn, and he draws a card, and he also gets a card off Fate. So he automatically gains the advantage that I would have taken from him with Zen Mayo. That's why that play was so frustrating, is because nothing happened because I made Tiras. And in fact, it put me way behind, as you can see. I'm down 4 cards to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're talking, I'm down a lot of cards. So he activates the Upstart Goblin, and I chain the DNA Surgery. I do this because I don't want him to normal summon a card and Fate my Tiras. I don't know if he has Fate in his hand, but I do know it's the instant blowouts in this game at the point that we're at right now. So I didn't want him to have it. So he has the Breaker, so I Solemn Warning. Breaker is very difficult to deal with. A lot of the decks don't play it, luckily. So I felt like my matchup post-board against the other Spellbook decks would be even stronger. He does play Hall, which I'm not really sure that you should be, but it's still not a bad card in the deck, as it does provide a lot of answers to bigger monsters. And so now I have double Rat in hand, and I attack directly to go ahead and beat one of his back row cards here. So I end up getting rid of that. And then I don't have Rabbit in the graveyard, unfortunately, so I end up just going ahead and getting the Shark and overlaying into Mech-equipped Engineer. Because he is, you know, he's not going to be able to activate Fate, and I just got rid of his Breaker. So that's kind of the idea here, is he can only win by, you know, destroying my monsters. So I wanted to save, and also Tiras is losing his material at the end phase. So that's why I went into the Mech-equipped play, because he's still 2600, and with Fate, with him having the counters on Star Hall, that puts him in a position to have just enough attack to get over all my other monsters. So I end up passing here and getting rid of my material. So he draws, and then of course he draws again because of Tower, because Tower is just stupid. He puts his Wisdom on the bottom and gets another draw. He thinks a second for some reason. I don't know what. I don't remember what was in his graveyard at this point. I didn't fan it, so I don't know. But I know he puts back. I believe there's a Fate in there, unless he. No, I think he put that back last turn. I know he has a Secrets in there and a Wisdom. That's about as far as I know right now. So he, yeah. So he thinks here for a second, and I'm just telling him how I misplayed with the Zen Mayo. Because I didn't have it in my extra. He probably doesn't have much sympathy for me. So I'm just kind of waiting on him right now to get that Tower to go ahead and resolve. And so he finally goes ahead and does it, and he just decides to put back the Wisdom, so he draws a card. And he plays Upstart. So he's trying to find a specific card right now. He's trying to find Breaker the Magical Warrior, because he has to find an out, and he finds it. So he gets his out to DNA Surgery, and he just kind of goes off here. So yeah, so at this point, this is the breaking point in the game, ha ha ha, because of Breaker. But yeah, this is the breaking point in the game for me, because DNA Surgery just left the field, and there's nothing I could have done about this at this point. He has the power to jump over, and so he puts me in a position here. Now his people need to keep in mind here, his graveyard is full, and I feel like he does misplay the way he plays this scenario with the Spellbook of Fate. But yeah, I felt like he told me he would target the one that I didn't choose off of Engineer. So he really should have just chosen the target that I did choose off Engineer, because it could have been banished and then he could attack over. So this game should be over at this point, but he did misplay here because he should have faded the one card. See, I'll activate Metquip because he tells me that in the text. I'll activate Metquipped on the Tiras, and he says he's just going to go ahead and use the Fade on Metquipped when he should have used it on Tiras and attacked over Metquipped, and then got another search. So this game should have been way, way, way over. But I kind of stay in it at this point because he can't be destroyed by battle. He just goes ahead and passes with a card set, which I know is probably another Spellbook of Fate. But it turns out not to be a Spellbook of Fate, or else I know he would have just go ahead and activated it on that. I know he has, I believe he has 2 Spellbooks in the graveyard at this time. So I'm just going to normal summon the Rat and then activate the Factory, which is a huge rib off the top, to try to help me climb back in this game. But reality speaks here, and it's just too little too late at this point to come back in. And because I also cut the Warrior, for the side deck for this matchup, so I don't have the option right now to go into a Volcasaurus play, which would have been pretty good, obviously, you know. Yeah, right here I could have I do search Shark, but I mean I could have gone into Invoker and then gotten Volcasaurus and then attacked in, which would have been enough for game. But I mean that's pending his back row as well. But I mean, like, to put this quite frankly, I didn't deserve to win this game because he already just had the answers as it was. But because I cut the Warrior from the deck for game 2, I do end up overlaying right here into I go into Zen Mains and I go to attack into his Breaker to try to get an out here. And he had the Threatening Roar, so it didn't really matter about the Volcasaurus play. I probably lose regardless. So I just pass here because he does only have 1 card in hand, so I'm like, maybe there's a shot I win this one. But he has the Eternity in his hand, which he grabs secrets, so the game just spirals out of control at this point. At some point during this turn, I just tell him, I'm going to flip the top card of my deck, and if it's not Spellbook, or if it's not Wind Up Magician, I'm just going to scoop. I'm not sure when that is. I just remember that I do that on this turn because he just has too much advantage. I believe it's when he summons his own Magician. I'm going to tell him that if I don't flip Magician off the top, I'm just going to scoop to him. It ends up being an MST that I could have used, you know, like 5 turns before. Not that this game went on for 5 turns or anything, but I am winning this game. As you can see, I'm up 1,600 life points. So that means I'm just better. No, I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, you know, that was my goal here. Is I was just like, if I don't flip Magician, the game's gone. It's over. Doesn't matter. He probably wins anyways, even if I do flip Magician. But it's not Magician, so I just admit defeat and we go to game. We go to the next game. I might have been able to ride the comeback train, maybe, in a fantasy world, but not in this game. So because of the Warrior play, I just felt stupid, so I just cut one of my upstarts and put the Warrior back in. I liked my side deck against Spellbooks because I like to have the opportunity to play Potted Duality and upstart to draw into them. So that's why I had done it like that. But, you know, the truth speaks, and you know, Volcasaurus had an opportunity to go through there, and it didn't because I didn't have it. So I still don't put the tour guides back in, just because, you know, I do want to have less monsters right now. I want to draw my traps. I want to draw the Mind Crushes, which I drew none of in the last game. I don't believe I drew any of my side deck cards except for that one DNA Surgery. So anyway, I'm just kind of checking out the Watchers chat because my friend Brandon's sitting right next to me during the game when I'm recording it, and he's just talking smack in there for no reason. So I opened up Thunder King and Solemn Warning. So I pretty much knew this game was a wrap as soon as I opened my hand. And I had the MST, so I just set all 3 and just passed to him. So I just opened up the dirtiest this turn, and that's just what happened. Like, there's just no way around that. That's just what happened. So All I know is that he's not going to be able to dump 3 spellbooks to the yard, and so I'm sitting pretty, and I'm like, what's his... Oh, he's like, oh, I'm like, oh, he has Book of Moon. That's pretty good. But my guy still has 800 defense, and I'm like, oh yeah, I have Solemn Warning. I'm just going to warning that, and then I could have Fiendished or Veilered there, but I just didn't want him to Fate. I didn't want him to get cards, so I just said, you know what, I'm not going to let him have cards. And Vexy's like, dude, are you serious? Yeah, warning again? I'm like, yeah, I did. So I flip up my Thunder King and I summon my rabbit and I just go in and I drew the DNA Surgery off the top, which I'm like, wow, that's pretty convenient. If I keep drawing like that, you know, it's amazing. Well, the DNA Surgery is kind of a 3-of because I play Zombie World as well. So I just go ahead and I wait this one out here, and he has... I decide not to activate any of the cards right now. He doesn't have the fuel for it, and I'm like, oh, Mind Crush, that's pretty strong. And so he has to take both damages here from the Thunder King and from the Rabbit. So, I mean, Vexy has nothing to be ashamed of. He does end up losing this game. I think that's fairly obvious what it is. And I have the MST for that. So I go ahead and activate the DNA Surgery. I was like, why not? And then I MST his Roll Decree. I should have waited, but I was like, I don't know, I just snap did it. I don't know why. But I'm going to go ahead and go in and attack, and I believe that's the point where he takes... Yeah, he loses on this turn. So I opened up Thunder King in Game 3 and Solemn Warning. So, I mean, you know, there's not a lot I could, you know, he could have done about that. And, you know, Vexy's one of my friends, and I can't wait to see him at YCS San Mateo. So I want to thank you guys for watching, and